Okay. Tonight we have research being presented from Metro Health. It's a new study that Dr. Kim Anderson and Dr. Rob Hoey are the principal investigators on. It's a stimulation for bowel function. I will turn it over to Dr. Anderson to kick off the start of this. So, thank you all for sticking with us, and thank you, Dr. Anderson and Dr. Hoey, for being here tonight to present to us. So take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Megan. I just want to give a little introduction and then I'm going to hand it over to Rob. So some of you may have heard myself and other colleagues over the last couple of years present information to you on a different project that we were doing, where we were getting your feedback to feed into our research and collect your perspectives and help us shape the analysis of the results that we were doing. And so this is a new study, and we want to do the same thing with the chapter members. This is the very beginning of the study, and Rob's going to go through that with you. But we'd like to be able to come back every year and share with you results as we're getting those results, and then get your feedback on how we may want to interpret those results. And potentially we can still modify some parts of the studies as we're going along. It's a 4-year study. And most importantly, we want to end up with results that are useful and meaningful to everyone else in our community. So anyone that may not know me, I have a spinal cord injury myself. And Rob and I both work at Metro Health with Megan. And I will go ahead and introduce it, hand it over to Rob, and we will go from there, and we'll have plenty of time for questions and comments.
Thanks, Kim. Yeah, so I have a few reasons why I wanted to do this talk. The first is just to introduce myself. I'm relatively new to the research community. You guys hear me? Okay. I'm relatively new to the research community with SCI in the human community. So I've done several studies looking at animal models and looking at bladder and bowel function. And so really this is kind of, I'm trying to get to know you, and I want you to get to know me as well. I also want to talk to you about the research that we're doing so that you can become interested, and also that you know that we're trying to work on problems that matter to you as a community. One thing that will become abundantly clear as we go through is that a lot of the issues that have been brought up time and time again by the SCI community have not generated a ton of research. And I think that's unfortunate, especially when these complications can be as detrimental as they are. So the other big reason is to really get your feedback. The studies that I'm going to talk to you about are feasibility studies. So it's really our first attempt at looking at this system and trying to figure out what's going on. And so your feedback is very important here, and it'll kind of help us figure out how to proceed in this study, but also what do you want us to study later? Because I think that's a really important thing moving forward, is that you can learn a lot from the literature and surveys and all these other things that are published, but I think talking to people who are living with spinal cord injury is even more important. And so that's really where I'm coming from. And, you know, lastly, a little bit selfishly, I want to encourage anybody that's interested in research to reach out. And if this is something that you'd be interested in, I have some contact information at the end, and we could definitely talk about if you want to participate. So those are just a few things, and we can talk later if you'd like. So we have a really great team. Kim Anderson is the PI at Metro Health, and I'm the partnering PI, which basically means she's taking me under her wing and showing me what's what, and I couldn't have a better teacher. Also, I want to mention Kim has put together most of these slides, which is why I said presented by. I tried to make them better, but I couldn't, so I just kind of rolled with it. And at the VA of Northeast Ohio, we have one of the physicians participating as well. Dr. Christy Hensel, and then Dr. Bourbeau, who also works with us at Metro Health. He's been studying the bladder system as well, and the technique that we're going to talk about, the nerve stimulation technique. We also have 2 SCI lived experience consultants that work with us. I thought I'd change that. It's not Jason Shaw, I'm sorry, it's Edward Stitz. I don't know how that happened. And so this is a 4-year project. The first 2 years are this acute study where we just do the stimulation at one point and we see what happens. And that's really just our attempt to figure out what's going on with the system and if we can influence it. The second part in year 3 and 4 is going to be a take home. So we're going to see what long-term stimulation can do. So talking about the background a little bit, I don't want to get my dad always gives long answers to short questions, and I have inherited that. So I don't want to talk too long. And really, my goal here is feedback. I want you guys to talk to me. So I'm going to try and go through this quickly and not talk so long. So ultimately, the research shows that bowel problems are one of the biggest daily challenges faced by people living with SCI. Right after I go through the background, I do have a feedback section. So I would love for you to tell me if this is correct or not based on your experience. And I'd really like it to be a discussion rather than me standing talking the whole time. So 1996, a little bit ago, they started looking into these bowel complications. They found 95% of the people that were filling out the survey had to use some sort of treatment for their bowel function. So whether it was a laxative, digital stimulation, all these other things, they had to do something, which indicates the system is not working the way that it should. And this is actually in people that are able to walk as well. So it's not a severity of injury that seems to be affecting it. It's that almost every person that has an SCI, whether it's an ASIA A or D, seems to have some impairment of the system, which means that there's a very large group of people that should have research focus on finding some treatment for it. A study a year later, 75% reported fecal incontinence. So this is something that, after having talked to some people, is a very difficult complication. And even if it happens rarely, is something that's very disruptive. And so should definitely have a lot of research resources dedicated to it. Now, that was almost 30 years ago. What's different now? Not much. So it's changed very little. And there are still large incidents of fecal incontinence, and this has been shown to severely impact people's social lives, ability to maintain employment, and things of that nature. So bowel function is really an untalked about complication that is affecting people's lives quite dramatically. In addition, there's very long toileting times to complete the bowel program. This is because of some of the things, the complications due to SCI, but also just constipation, motility issues, and things of that nature. The steps required to assist in those treatments that we talked about at the beginning, just to complete it can be an onerous task that can be life-limiting. So some things that we're trying to do are using electrical stimulation, and I've highlighted here bladder function because this is where this has been studied the most. Unfortunately, bowel function has only been studied a couple times that I'll talk about in a minute. Now, this genital nerve stimulation is non-invasive, so it's on the surface of the skin, and there are some places where the nerve goes very close to the skin, so you can get it pretty easily with electrical stimulation. Similar to the funny bone, when you whack it, it's really close to the skin, so it's easy to access for us. That means we don't have to put a needle in, we don't have to implant anything, and we can still affect that system, which is preferable. You avoid infections and all kinds of other things. This has been studied actually in a number of different contexts. Just a couple of these are citations. At-home stimulation was also found to be effective. So this is something where somebody that had sensation was able to feel some of these reflexive spastic bladder contractions and turn on the stim, and it would reduce that contraction, and they were able to go longer without catheterizing. And so, you know, if they were in a car, they didn't have to like break the speed limit to get home to cath. They were able to hold it. Or I believe one person, you know, they had such urgency that when they felt it, they had about 30 seconds to get to the bathroom before they had an accident. And so they were able to push the button, use the stimulation to calm that bladder event, and give them the time to get to the bathroom. And so it really allowed them to get back to work and do the things that they wanted to do, rather than kind of being at the mercy of the system. And unfortunately, only 2 pilot projects have looked at this in terms of bowel function. And one study showed a positive result. The other study showed either no change, or maybe a little bit detrimental. So really, we don't know what's going to happen, and we don't know what's going on with the system, but there are good reasons to think that it will help. The bladder and the bowel function systems are actually linked physiologically and functionally. In able-bodied persons that have severe constipation, it's actually difficult to urinate. So the two systems actually seem to talk to each other and can influence each other. And so we would expect that something that would affect one could also affect the other. Additionally, they work pretty much the same. They both store contents for a period of time, and then they evacuate that contents. They use similar sphincter anatomy, and they do similar things. And so there's good reason to think that we can affect the system with this stimulation, which would be preferable to implanted electrodes. So here's the feedback part. Did that make sense to you? Is that something that you feel reflects the experiences that you have dealing with your SCI? And just feel free to chime in if you would like to. So do you feel these reflect your experience? Is there anything you want to add? Is there anything that we should be looking at or thinking about? Is there an impact that a treatment for fecal incontinence would have on your life that you think, or anything else that you want to add? So please go ahead.
Yo,
Hi, Greg.
hey, how's it going, Rob?
All right.
Most importantly, man, thanks for showing up and showing out, man. I am just now reaching into my fourth year. It'll be my fourth year in September, and it's just crazy listening to you talk, man. Yeah, it sucks, like it really does. Right now, as we speak, I'm sitting up here looking at all the stuff on this counter, trying to figure out how I'm going to make it work for the night so I can possibly get up and go to the gym tomorrow. Because I've been suspended from the RTA probably like 3 times because of my bowel situation. I'll be in too much pain, and I just be like, forget it. I don't want to go out into the world. You know, I heard about the electric stimulation thing maybe I believe last year, and I'm actually looking forward to it. I'm not gonna hold you up. I just wanted to speak because I like talking probably. But man, God bless you, brother. Like for real, like if I can deal with everything that came with this injury, man, like I really can't. Just take away this bowel situation. And I'm telling you, I'll be a much happier person, man, because like it shuts me down. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to go outside because I'll be in pain. And then I don't know, it's just I'm gonna let somebody else speak. I just wanted to say something though. Thank you, Rob, man.
Yeah, thank you for talking, Greg. I hear
Oh
you.
yeah, listen, like whatever type of help you need, like volunteers, whatever. As long as I ain't no guinea pig and gonna grow no extra leg, man, I'm for it.
No. Yeah, that sounds great. So I have some contact information at the end, or I can reach out to you. I'll just write your name down, and we can talk about that later.
Bingo, I'll be waiting on your call, Rob. Thank you so much, brother.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
And we decided to try something that was non-invasive because we know a lot of other options have been, where they involve a surgery or things like that. And so is that more enticing to people to have something that's maybe less risky when it comes to not having to do surgery?
Hello, everybody. I would say yes. And the reason I say yes is because I have a baclofen pump. And that's surgically implanted device. I've had this for like two years, and I've already had 4 surgeries.
Oh, wow.
Due to the complications, that arise with the unit. So like having something on the outside of the skin, on the outside of the body that's you're able to, access without needing to have surgery or be put to sleep. That's to me, that's way more beneficial than, because with the surgically implanted device, you're going to have it surgically redone every 5 years. Well, that's for my baclofen pump at least. So having the option to have something to not have inserted in you is a great option. And just to build on what Greg said, man, I agree with him too, and everybody else, I'm sure. It does reflect on all of our experiences, I'm pretty sure, because I'm pretty sure we've all had, bowel accidents and things like that. So having an option to possibly try this out, I might be interested in it. It's just, I'm kind of leery about it because I'm just not sure if there's something that might help me. But, with a little bit more research and a little bit more information, might be something I'll be willing to try.
Excellent. Thanks for talking
That's
to us.
Oh, no problem.
It makes a lot of
I
sense.
appreciate you guys and all the research that you guys are doing. It's really helpful.
One of the things that we'll be learning from this first study that Rob's going to explain is what are the characteristics that would let us know who would be a good responder to this kind of stimulation.
Right. So that would help us kind of when you're in the clinic, determine if you're having bowel issues, would this be something you would benefit from? And it wouldn't be like a research study, it would be more of a treatment option, which is really what we're going for. We want something that is non-invasive, that doesn't require a lot of extra care, but that could have an influence on this, preventing bowel accidents, and then hopefully in the future, helping with the toileting as well. So if we could have something that stimulated when you wanted to go, and helped you with that, and stimulated when you didn't want to go and helped you with that. That's kind of the idea, right? Kind of just inserting something, some sort of tech or some clever way of stimulation that could support the systems that were cut off essentially by the injury.
I know for myself, I have no control anymore. Once it goes, it goes. If I have to go, it goes.
Right.
I may go every day. I may not go for a week. Thankfully, my wife's an RN that deals with these problems at work. So when she's home, I do have some help.
That's
So
great.
now we're going on a week here, and I'm feeling pretty bloated. And like he said, you're afraid to go anywhere.
Yep.
Because like I said, I have no control over starting and stopping.
Right. Yeah, thank you for letting us know, David.
Now, David, just real quick, man, have you tried magic bullet suppositories?
I'm not really on any suppositories right now. I am on some medicine called Amitiza.
Okay.
That's supposed to help with the regular bowel movement.
Okay, because
Like I said, sometimes it works every day, sometimes it don't work for a week.
oh wow, okay, yeah, because I know I don't have control myself on whether I can or can't go. If it comes, it comes. So, but I use magic bullet suppositories that I order off of Amazon, and those, they help me a lot. And when I can't go, I use a natural laxative called Senecot. And that, helps me out. So, if you can, try those things and, talk it over with your doctor. Just an, option for you.
Well, I use magic bullets as well, and they are magical. They work way better
Yes,
than anything
yes,
else
they
that
do.
I've used. Mhm.
Rhonda in the chat said, I think just about the study in general, that it would probably make a huge impact in her life. And then mentioned that she's had great success using Fiber One cereal every day. And then Tim mentioned that the less invasive option would be a better option in his perspective.
Yeah, thanks for those comments. I think that's that's what we've been hearing a lot of, as well as kind of the impact that it has on people's lives. And so, you know, when I got this job at Metro Health, they said, we want to focus on clinical impact. And I think that's great because what I'm interested in pursuing. Okay, just to move on in the sake of time, I really like the discussion, and so I'm going to stop a couple more times. So please keep participating. So this is what we're actually going to try and do. Based on the background literature and people's experience, can we use this to affect bowel function? That's really what we want to do, and prevent a bowel accident first off. So there are a couple reasons for that. So our goal is really to understand how the stimulation affects the systems that we're looking at. So that's why the first one is really just 1 day, which I'll get to in a little bit. But you come in, fill out some questionnaires, and we get some information, and then we will do a clinical exam to kind of figure out level of injury, severity, and these other things, presence of reflexes, and whether you respond to the stimulation. Once we know that, then we can go through this protocol and figure out exactly how that stimulation is affecting those systems. So we get a baseline, and then we look at stim, and then we do a rebaseline. So we're just trying to figure out how those tissues respond to that stimulation at that period in time. Once we understand that, we can kind of have an idea how they're going to respond long term, or whether they're going to respond in the way that would be helpful in terms of preventing bowel accidents. So we also want to try to be able to predict who will be a responder versus not responder. And so we're going to do that in for a 4-week at-home trial. So there's the 1 day in the first part where we're just trying to figure out what's going on in the system with stimulation. Then we're going to ask a subset of those people to take home a device and stimulate for 8 hours and see if that reduces the incidence of bowel accidents. And so that's really what we're focused on, is trying to prevent the bowel accidents. Down the road, we want to stimulate for defecation, but for right now, let's limit the bowel accidents. And then if that's feasible, we would want to look at a larger study and really try and get this to a point where we could start to say you will get a benefit. Because unfortunately right now it's so young in the research phase that we can't say this will help you. What we can say is this might help you, you might get a benefit, but we just don't know. And I want to get us to the point where we can provide this as a treatment. And so this is a first step. Now, we do have some preliminary data. Unfortunately, there are only 2 pilot studies from forever ago, like over 10 years ago, and they're mixed. So we don't really have a lot of good information to go on, but we did have one person who volunteered to let us collect some preliminary data. And so this requires anal rectal manometry, which is, I'm not sure if you're familiar with that test. It's where a catheter with pressure sensors on it is inserted into the rectum. And so you will test how those tissues respond. So we'll get anal pressure and we'll get rectal pressure while you're doing things like trying to squeeze to withhold a bowel movement, trying to push to have a bowel movement, coughing and things like that, really to just see the function of those tissues. And so that's what these data are here. Now, this may look like a lot, but I'm going to walk you through it. So here, this is the baseline activity. So without stimulating anything, this is what their rectum in red here and sphincter in blue is doing. Now, in this box, we've asked that the person to squeeze as if they're trying to withhold a bowel movement. Now, Will and David said that there's very little control, and I believe this participant also had very little control, but she was trying. And so what we see is that when we asked her to squeeze, you actually, to withhold a bowel movement, so you're trying to hold it, there's actually a reduction in the sphincter pressure. So instead of actually holding on, it released, which is the opposite of what we want. And so if there were material there ready to be expelled, she would have had an accident. Because in trying to hold it, she actually reduced that pressure, and it happened here again on the 3rd time. And so what you'll notice is kind of a chaotic pattern that has these dips in it. Sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down, but essentially it's not really well regulated anymore. In the rectum, you also have these increases in pressure here, if you can see. And right around these increases, you either get an increase in the sphincter or a decrease in the sphincter pressure. So it's hard to predict. And that's probably due to those changes that occur after injury. The spinal cord isn't nearly as good at organizing this as the brain is. And so once those two things are disconnected, the spinal cord is driving this, and it does it terribly. So we have to train it how to do it better. And so here what you see is you have the rectum pressure increase and the sphincter pressure decrease. If that happens, that's a bowel accident, because essentially what's happening is it's squeezing to defecate and there's nothing to hold it back, and essentially the door is open. And so this here is a minor example of exactly what we don't want to happen when we're trying to withhold a bowel movement. And so this is at baseline. So again, if this were to happen out in the wild, this would be an accident. The same here. You get an increase in that rectum pressure and you get a decrease in the sphincter pressure, opposite of what we're going for if you want continence. Now, if you ignore the top one and you focus here on this middle graph, the rectal response. So now we've broken it up into just the rectum and then just the sphincter underneath it. What you'll see is that when you have the control, so this is the same line from above. Okay, you have this rectal trace here, which is reflected down here. You've got these increases in rectal pressure, which are kind of those spastic contractions that you get. And here, when we apply GNS or the general nerve stimulation, that all calms down. So this is actually what we see in the bladder system as well. It's calming down that spastic reaction. So that's your spinal cord going, oh no, and squeezing. And here, the stimulation calms that down and prevents that contraction. Okay, so you're not getting the push of the material. Additionally, if you go down here to the anal sphincter response, when that stimulation is on, that pressure doesn't decrease nearly as much. So in this one person, at this one point in time, this one data point, what it looks like is that when we have this GNS stimulation on, you have a reduction in those rectal contractions, so less push, and you have a prevention of that decrease in sphincter pressure, which would cause that, which would lead to that bowel accident. So it looks like in this person at this one point in time, the stimulation is changing the activity in such a way that we think it would help maintain continence. It's doing the right things in the right way at the right time in this one person. So that's what really led us to think that I think we're onto something here. I think it's changing the activity in a way that will lead to a reduction in bowel accidents during stimulation, is what it looks like. Now, again, just to be the conservative scientist and not make promises I can't back up, we don't know if this will carry through in the full study. That's why we're doing the research. But this is really, I think, very encouraging in that it's doing what we think it should do at the time it should be doing it. And so this gives us a lot of hope that when we do have more people and we start to have an N of more than one, or a group of more than just one observation, once we start to get more and more people, then we can start to figure out what's really going on here. So just again, the spontaneous reflex activity and this pattern of activity, this is what leads to accidents. Increase in rectal tone, decrease in sphincter tone. You open the gates and you push it on out. And without the ability to voluntarily contract the sphincter, there's no way to stop it, as a couple of you mentioned. And so I think that that reality is reflected here in our data, which, again, is it very encouraging for moving forward with the full study. So again, this is just saying what we already said, that surface stimulation, and it's on the surface again, it's not implanted, there's no needles, there's nothing like that. And it seems to be doing what we want it to do, which I think is great. Before I move on, that was kind of a lot. Does anybody have any questions before I keep going?
I do.
Sure.
I had an InterStim implanted back in 2000 to try to control the spastic spasms of my bladder. They
Okay.
had tried to basically tried everything to try to stop it. The lead had to be stitched into my spinal cord.
Mhm.
It broke free, had to be revised again. Basically the InterStim did not function like they thought it should back then. I don't know if there's been any improvements since then, but it did not function at all to try to reduce any of the spasming in my bladder at all. So basically, since then, it's been in my body since 2000, and it has not worked for me like they thought it should.
Yeah, that is an unfortunate risk of some of these implanted devices. And, in the literature, they talk about the percentages, but the percentage isn't a person. It's just a number, but there are in some of these, necessary surgeries because the device malfunctioned or they need to replace things and things like that. And so that's definitely a risk of these implantable devices. I'm not familiar with how the InterStim has come along. I do know they have some other options, and I know one of our collaborators, Dr. Bourbeau, does an implant of the FineTech Brinley system, which is also implanted in the body, and it attaches near the spinal cord on some spinal roots. So that's a pretty invasive option as well. But again, all of those carry the risk of it might not work, or it might work for a little while and then have to, be resected or changed and additional surgeries. And so unfortunately, that is a part of the implanted devices. I do not think that would have any influence on surface stimulation though. So this may still be an option for bladder function for you if you wanted to. I could put you in touch with Dr. Bourbeau and we could see about if you wanted to participate in his study. His study is far enough along that he can actually say if the stim works, it will give you a benefit. So that's something nice. But we can talk about that later if you'd like. There may be other options if you want to pursue those.
Well, the only question I have is currently I have an SP tube that helps manage that. So I don't know if that will cause any interference.
Oh, the suprapubic?
Yes.
No, I think that's fine.
Yeah, it shouldn't cause any interference because you still have spasms and stuff. The
Okay.
reflexes are still there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's even a problem for the studies either, and participation or even seeing if these things will work, because it's working on the bladder and not the sphincter as much, so it doesn't really matter which direction it goes, whether it comes out the suprapubic or it goes through the urethra. It's irrelevant. So you might get some benefit from that.
Okay.
Does anybody else have something to add real quick? I see a bunch of people in the chat. Sorry. Probiotics. It's amazing how far that has come along in research. It seems like it affects everything. Okay. If there's no more questions, I'll just keep going. All right. All right, so the inclusion criteria, I'll just briefly go through this. So at least 6 months post-injury, we want to make sure that whatever's happening and the plastic changes have happened already. And, in this period, there's a lot of things that people are dealing with in their new normal. So any sooner than that, and I think it wouldn't be as helpful. Age 18, just so you're an adult and you can sign for yourself and things of that nature. So the neurological level is actually really important here. So that means the level of the cord where the injury is, not the vertebrae. And those are not the same the lower you go. So that's something that we can definitely talk about in person. So above T12 is the neurological level we're looking for. And the reason for that is that these reflexes, this pudendoanal and bulbocavernosus reflex, come from the area of the cord that's lower than that. And if these are destroyed, the stimulation doesn't work anymore. So the stimulation goes into the cord, changes how that works, and then the cord talks to the bladder. So without that loop being intact, it doesn't do anything. And so there wouldn't be any benefit, and the stimulation just you wouldn't respond to it. So that's really the reason for that level. And also AIS grade A through D. So anyone with any impairment after a traumatic SCI can participate. And this is for a couple reasons. One, to make it inclusive to anybody that's having bowel issues. We want to talk to you and we want to see if we can help. But also it helps us get a better understanding of what we're actually dealing with. So if we have less severe injuries and we compare those to more severe injuries, you start to get an idea of what's actually affected by the injury. And that gives us clues on how we can change our approach to do a better job. So this is giving us a lot of great information in what's actually causing the complications and how we can best address that. And then, right, able to understand and provide informed consent. So really, these are pretty open inclusion criteria, and that was on purpose. We want to try and get as many people as want to participate into the study, and we'd love to talk to you. Okay, so very quickly, the AIM-1, which is most of what I want to talk about today, is fairly short. So recruitment would be, we're talking to you, you're deciding whether to come in, and your first appointment is the screening appointment. Now that's where you come in and you'll sign the consent forms and we'll explain everything to you. And then we'll go through the other data collection. So we'll talk about injury history, medical history. We'll do the bowel function questionnaires, and you'll also have the INSCI test done, which will look at the neurological aspects of your injury, confirm the injury level and severity and things like that. So at the very least, you get that information if you don't already have it. I've talked to several people that aren't sure what their AIS grade is. So, there's some benefit, there's an informational benefit to participating in at least the first part. I always like to know what's going on in my body. Anytime I have an x-ray, I'm like, can I take a picture of that? Because how often do you get to see inside there? So I don't know if anybody else has that odd fascination. The second visit is the manometry visit. Now this may take a little while to do because we're doing repeated testing, right? So we have the short protocol, it's about 8 minutes long, and we say, can you, short squeeze, can you squeeze for 5 seconds? And then you rest, squeeze for 5 seconds. And we ask you to cough. We ask you to push as if trying to have a bowel movement. And then we do some rectal sensation testing by filling a balloon that's in the rectum. And then we see the first sensation when you have an urgency to go to the bathroom and max tolerance. So how full it gets before you say, look, I'm uncomfortable. And so those values will give us an idea of any residual rectal sensation that you have. We'll do that at baseline. So the whole protocol will be done at baseline. So we'll kind of see what's the situation when we start. Then we will apply stimulation, and we'll do it while the stimulation is on. So we'll say, what is it doing while we're stimulating? And then we'll wait a little bit and we'll do it again without stimulation, so a re-baseline. And so what that's going to tell us is we're going to have two no stim periods that we can compare to the stim periods, and we'll be able to collect data that'll be very similar to, excuse me for a second, to this, on and off. So this will tell us what the stimulation is actually doing. Is it calming down the rectal contractions? Is it leading to a more even sphincter tone without these dips? So if it does that, we have good reason to think that it will promote continence. So that's really what we're looking for. And if you really wanted to, it would be a long day, but we could do it all in one day. So if transportation is an issue or scheduling is an issue, there is that option. I wouldn't recommend it just because, once you get to the third hour, I want to go home. And we don't want you to get to that point. We want this to be a comfortable thing that you're doing and not too onerous. So the outcome is really just to understand how the stimulation is affecting your body and changing its function. And if we can do that well enough and we compare it to all the other data we're getting, we might be able to figure out what the important factors are of whether you will respond to the stim or not. And then we would invite you, if you do respond well, invite you to the at-home trial, which is the AIM2, which starts in the 3rd year. So this is really a fairly quick AIM1. It would just be, a half a day, 2 days, and we could get these, collect these data, and we would actually provide those back to you within a couple weeks. So we do have a GI physician that's part of the grant, and they would review those data, and they could give you that information as well, which may help you in your care moving forward. There's a small stipend for each visit that you come in, and transportation and an overnight or 2-night stay in the Zuber Zaretta House can also be provided if those help you participate, because I know there are a lot of barriers to participation in the community, and so we're trying to limit those as much as we can. This Zuber Zaretta House, I'm not sure if you've heard of it. This is a house that's been outfitted with a lot of adaptive technology, and so it's somewhere that if a participant is coming in to have surgery, this is where they would recover. It's right next to the hospital, and so this would make, if you come and stay, it would make getting to and from the lab for the experiments very easy. We would just come over, grab you, bring you over, and then we could bring you right back where you could make dinner if you choose. So this is a pretty cool amenity to have, and it's not something that I've seen at other places. So that's pretty cool. It's really nice too. I want to stay there. So yeah, what do you guys think? Is it too much? Do you think it's something you would want to do, something your friends would want to do? Again, I'm just trying to kind of get a feel or field any questions or comments that you guys have, positive or negative. I could take it.
Hi, I'm
Oh, hi.
Rhonda. Hi. Sounds pretty heavy. Got a little like embarrassing, but really important. I mean,
Yep.
this works. This could be incredible. I think worth the time. That's all I had to say.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it is embarrassing. I think that's why people don't want to study it. But I'm perfectly comfortable being called the poop guy for the rest of my life. If we can figure this
That's
out,
hilarious.
I mean, it's better than things have been called in the past, believe me. So
Also, I've been through it. I've had my share of accidents out in public, and so I know what everyone is feeling when that happens. But we also wanted to try to create an option because, there's the things that they tell us to do, right? And if we can't get that to work, the next thing they tell us to do is have a colostomy, that's a pretty, invasive surgical procedure. And there's not really anything in between. So this is the possibility that it could become something where if the diet and suppositories and things like that aren't working well, then there could be a simple non-invasive step that may be beneficial for some individuals before having to go to a colostomy or something really invasive like that.
all right, well, if anyone has any other questions, please feel free to contact me and I can explain those or talk to you about them at another time. So the AIM2 is really just an at-home study. So it would be the same stimulation, the same stimulator. There will be 2 arms. So in the first one, in the first AIM1, you get both types of stimulation. You get an ineffective sham stimulation, and you get an effective GNS stimulation to see the difference, right? We want to see what it looks like when the stimulation is working and what it looks like when the stimulation isn't working, so we can kind of get an idea of how the stimulation works. In this paradigm, there would be two arms, so the stimulation arm and the control arm. And we would have to be blind to make sure that we can draw conclusions on whether it's working or not. The benefit to this is that afterwards you can keep the stimulator and we can show you how to do the effective stimulation. So even if you didn't get it during the 4 weeks of at home, you would then have it afterwards. And so you could try the effective stimulation after that and see if that gives you a benefit. So there will be 3 arm procedures. So there will be the first one. So this is the baseline. We're just, what's the situation at the start? And these are people that also participated in AIM-1. So we would want to see, did anything change between the last time you were here and this time? Then there will be 4 weeks of at-home stimulation during the day, so for 8 hours. So it's quite a long time during the day. But what we're thinking is that if the stimulation being on is changing function in a way that would promote continence, so prevent bowel accidents, we kind of want that to be on during the day, so that then people can go out and engage in the things that they want to engage in during the day without having to worry about having an accident. So this would be kind of a longer commitment in time, but also a longer commitment to the stimulation per day. Again, this is a feasibility trial, so we don't know if that's something that can be done. And that's one of the questions we're trying to answer. Can you have it on for 8 hours a day? If you're not able to because of comfort, or there's something with the stimulator, or there's some part of the setup or the design that makes it so you're not able to do that, that's something that we want to know. And so, at the risk of saying guinea pig again, no extra limbs will be grown. But this is kind of where you guys are like the test pilot, right? We have a new thing that we think can really help. Can you try it for us? And tell us everything that's wrong with it. We want to know the warts and everything else. This lead broke. This was too flimsy. We want to know that. Putting it on and taking it off every day was just too much. It took me too long, or these electrodes didn't stick, or after a couple hours, it started to become uncomfortable. So those are all things that we want to hear. It's not, oh, hey, this is amazing. The big thing about feasibility is that we need to know if it's going to work. And the only way that we know that is we have people try it, and then they tell us all the details, whether it worked or whether it didn't work, and why it didn't work, or what helped with keeping it, what helped with applying the stimulation and the design. That's all really important. Then after the 4-week stimulation, we'll have another arm or another anal rectal manometry testing to see how the stimulation changed the function. Then we'll do a 2-week period where there's no stimulation, and then we'll test again to see if this is a long-lasting effect. In bladder function, they found that if they stimulated for a while, they didn't need the stimulator as much. So they were literally training their spinal cord how to do its job better. And that's ultimately what we want. If we could apply a stimulation in such a way that we could teach your body how to do what it needs to do to have better function, that would be perfect. We're not in this planned obsolescence phone game where we need to make you buy a new one every year. We want our treatment to fix the problem. And so if that happens, that would be the best outcome, I think.
Rob, do you have any concern about AD with the stimulation?
So one of the concerns is that if we are promoting continence and that's causing distension of the bowel, that can lead to AD. It is something that in AIM-1 we're watching very carefully to see. The stimulation alone doesn't seem to cause AD. This has been shown a bunch of times in people with SCI that were in the bladder function studies, but distension of the bladder still will cause AD. So it is a concern, and it's something that we do watch very carefully. But at this point, we don't really know what's going to happen in the bowel function stuff. But we do know that distension of the colon and the rectum is a strong stimulator for AD. So it's definitely something to stay aware of. Any other questions?
Dr. Hoey, I have a question.
Yes, Don.
So is the program being introduced to the participants to train them to not go or to control the opportunity of going to the bathroom, to having a bowel movement?
That's a great question. It's to train the body not to have bowel accidents. Is the
Am-
ultimate goal.
is- Okay,
Yeah, and really, the bowel program and digital stimulation and suppositories and laxatives are probably still going to be needed if they were needed before, but this is something that should help prevent those incontinence episodes. That's what we're focusing on first. It's also the most in line with what happened in the bladder studies. So we're thinking it's much more likely it's going to have that effect, that it's just going to calm down all that reflexive spastic contractions, and so lead to promoting continence. Now the training part is actually for just the tissues itself, because the spinal cord does learn over time. It can change its activity in a way that has better functioning over time if you stimulate it correctly. We saw that in the bladder function stuff. So we're hoping that could happen. If we teach the spinal cord, hey, no, you have to have a higher anal pressure, it can do that. We just need to make it do that. And then it will learn over time.
a higher anal pressure to release to release feces or
No, during the day to prevent the release of feces.
true. Okay.
Yeah, so we're focused on the incontinence first. So really we want to prevent the bowel accidents. And so if we can teach your spinal cord how to do that, then we don't need the stimulator, and that's a win for us. So ultimately that's where the training comes in, is that your spinal cord does learn a little bit. And so we can kind of manipulate how it functions in the long term by doing things like this. And that's what we're hoping for, that eventually you won't need the stimulator. I don't know how likely that is, but we're going to find out. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Real quick. I'm sorry. It looks like we're over the 8 o'clock mark.
Yeah, with all of the commotion at the beginning, I don't think we started until about 7:15. So about 5 more
Okay.
minutes, and then we'll start wrapping up.
Okay, thanks. And thank you for your time and staying. I do appreciate it. So we talked a lot about genital nerve stimulation. This is where those areas are where it's close to the skin. So in males, it's on the top side of the penis. So it runs right along there, and you just put the electrodes on there. And for the females, it's right next to the clitoris here on each of the labia. And so this is where the electrodes need to be to apply the stimulation to the right part to get the effects that we're looking for. This is one of the areas that feasibility might start to fall apart. Because if the electrodes don't stick very well in here or here, you're going to have an issue with 8 hours of stimulation during the day. So Dr. Bourbeau is also testing a new electrode for women in particularly. It's a little easier in men because you can just kind of tape around it. But for women, there's not really a good way to secure those electrodes and prevent them from moving around. So they're developing a new type of electrode that we're going to try and find people that are willing to test to see if that's a better option. Because we know that that's a known issue for this stimulation that we're trying to fix. So that's what we're talking about in terms of the genital nerve stimulation. For the at-home study, we're going to have 2 large groups, one A and B. So this is the Asia A and B. So this would be motor and sensory complete, motor complete, and then getting more into the incomplete injuries here. And then the 3 evaluations are the 3 arm tests. Gonna skip this in terms of time. Again, transportation and the Zubizarreta house will be provided as needed. We want to limit as many barriers to participation as we can, and we budgeted for that. So we want to get you in if you want to participate, and we don't want any of this to stop you. So really quickly, I do want to talk about some other ongoing studies before we get to this feedback, because I know at least Greg might be interested. So again, bowel and bladder function are kind of always tied together in people's minds, but also because they're usually both an issue. So Dr. Bourbeau has closed loop bladder control. So closed loop is this interesting idea that the computer will stimulate for you. You don't have to turn anything on. You don't have to turn it off. You don't have to worry, do I feel that? Don't I feel that? So what they do is they have this sensor that they've developed that just sits inside the bladder and can tell what the pressure is. So as your bladder starts to fill, it'll have one of those spastic contractions, right? Which is shown down here. So it starts to fill and then it goes whoop, and it starts to have this big contraction. This would be an incontinence event or a urinary incontinence event. But with the stimulation on, you can see the stimulation turns on right here as it starts to go up. It'll actually calm down that bladder spasm and prevent the incontinence event. So that's what's going on in the bladder. Now, what he's trying to do is to refine this, right? So you can have it on a watch. You can have this little device so that when you get a bladder spasm, it talks to the receiver that has an algorithm that decides, is this a spastic bladder contraction or not? If it is, it automatically turns on the stimulator, which calms down the bladder contraction. Okay, so this is the closed loop part. So no input is needed from the user. It just does it automatically. And so this will prevent a lot of those spastic contractions throughout the day until you get to a point where it's no longer a spastic contraction, but it's actually your bladder needing to void. And so then you can go and catheterize. But this will, this could definitely change the amount of time necessary between catheterizations. So if you have a lot of these spastic contractions, you may need to cath every hour, every 2 hours to prevent an accident. With this sort of stimulation or this sort of system, you might be able to go much longer. And so that would kind of limit some of these barriers to participation that you may be experiencing as well. There's one of these where we actually want to test you in the hospital. So running around, not sitting in a bed. There is a sedentary closed loop study that you can participate in. There's another one called ambulatory where we actually will outfit you with the system, insert the sensor, make sure it's all working, and then you just go and get lunch in the cafeteria, you know, hang out with us, maybe play some cards, figure out, you know, do your life for a little while, and we'll collect some data and see if this is actually something that would be useful. So those are two studies. I know we talked about surgical options aren't great, but there is a bladder implant study. So this is the Fintech Brinley stimulator device. Now, this is an implanted system. So this part D, E, and F are actually implanted in the body, and the rest is outside. And so there's this coil that you tap into to stimulate it, and then this will stimulate your nerves, which go down and act on the bladder. Now, this is actually to not necessarily for continence, but for voiding. So this is actually effective for bladder function, bowel function, and sexual function in males. And so we had someone come in named Alex who had one of these, and he said it was the best decision he ever made because he was fairly young when he was injured, and this allowed him to kind of have control over his bladder, which he hadn't been able to have for the 2 years prior. He was having like 6-8 accidents a day. And so this kind of changed things for him. But again, it is an invasive option that comes with risks. And he was very happy with his, but that's no guarantee you would be happy with yours. Additionally, there's a rhizotomy that's done, which means they cut the sensory nerves. So because of the way the system works, you don't want the feedback from the sensory nerves to interfere with it. It can cause AD and unsafe bladder pressures and things like that. So they typically cut those. Dr. Bourbeau wants to do this without cutting those and using a different type of stimulation for the same goal. So this is another study that is ongoing and looking for participants. If you think this would be good for you, just let me know and I can put you in touch with him. And then there is a bowel stimulation study that's about to start. This is for emptying, and this is an electric stimulator that you would insert into the rectum prior to as you're doing your bowel program, and this would kind of take the place of DigStim. So you wouldn't have to insert your finger and twirl it around anymore. This would go in and electrically stimulate that same reflex. So this would help with bringing material down from the large intestine and helping with evacuation. And this may be something that would be easier to do if there's limited hand function or just for ease of use rather than having to go through the process of DigStim and things, you'd be able to insert this device and then it would help you do that instead. This has been shown in one veteran at a VA in Syracuse to be effective, not only for defecation, but also for helping move flatus out. So getting rid of some of that gas pain and the abdominal pressure that can come with issues in bowel function. So those are the things that are ongoing, and these are our contact information. So any final comments? I don't want to keep you any longer than I already have, but please feel free to reach out. You can get my information from Megan if you are more comfortable that way, or if you want to write it down and reach out to me directly, I'd be happy to talk to anybody. So any final comments while you want to stay on the line, I'd be happy to hear.
Hey, I just wanted to say thanks again, Rob.
Yeah, no problem. Happy to be here.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to rewatch this. At the beginning, I missed.
I'm glad you were recording.
Yes, Rhonda, I was just getting ready to say that we did record this. I will get it up on our YouTube channel. So a replay will be sent out probably towards the end of the week. And I will include the contact information in the email as well. But you can always email the chapter and we can forward your information on to Dr. Hoey or Dr. Anderson. So Rob, thank you for presenting tonight. Everybody else, thank you for sticking with us if you were there at the beginning. Like I just mentioned, we'll get the replay out towards the end of the week. And if you have any questions or anything like that, feel free to reach out. Our next meeting will be March 20th, I believe. Just really quick to check that date. 1, 2, 3. Yep, March 20th. Next meeting, we will have a registration link. So make sure you register before logging in tonight. And we will have More Than Walking with us. It's a national peer mentoring organization that has some different programs and services. So definitely want to check that out. And if anybody needs anything in the meantime, feel free to reach out as well. And if you want to get involved, we are looking for some more people to help out with things like event planning, if you're interested in board of directors or a few other positions. So if you're interested, send us an email. Otherwise, everybody have a wonderful night, rest of your evening. Have a wonderful week, and we will see you next month.